Joined now by Mike Preston for the Baltimore Sun with a look at his grades and his report card from this thrilling overtime victory that the Ravens just came off of. Man, what a game, Mike.
Well, it was a crazy game, a bizarre game, but kind of typical for a Ravens-Bengals game because, both of these teams can score a lot of points. They both have great quarterbacks. And as the game went along, it developed into a quarterback duel. Joe Burrow versus Lamar Jackson. And Lamar pulled it out at the end, and he carried the Ravens through this one. Believe me, if he doesn't play, they don't win this game.
Yeah, no question about that. So let's talk a little bit about Lamar. What did you see, and what kind of grade would you give him? Because really, it was stellar, especially in the second half.
Well, what happened was in the first half, he kind of fluttered some balls, and I'm like, nah, that's not Lamar. But then in the second half, because Cincinnati started to pull away, Joe Burrow's starting to heat up. He's throwing to those receivers, and all of a sudden you see Lamar starting to say, "Nah, okay, I've beaten Josh Allen in the last week. I'm going to beat Joe Burrow today." And he kind of heated up, and he finished great. And the Derrick Henry stiff arms, where did that come from? I haven't seen that all year. And all of a sudden, he looks more like Derrick Henry than Derrick Henry looked like Derrick Henry. So, great game for him, and I ended up giving him an A.
Well, we're talking about Derrick Henry. Didn't have an absolutely great game like we've gotten used to seeing out of him through the first 4 weeks prior to today's game. Came out a little bit iffy, a little shaky, did score that touchdown. Then the long run at the end of the game in overtime kind of padded the stats a little bit. What would you grade him and the running backs?
Well, what was kind of cool was even though he didn't have that energy early in the game, but by the overtime, the Ravens came out and basically told Cincinnati, we're going to pound the ball with him. And I'm like, uh-oh, big man's loose. And they stayed with it. And then he makes the run at the end. Great closer, great finish. Justice Hill gave him very little as far as running the ball, but was very good in pass protection. So I gave them a C+.
C+. And the O-line, of course, had kind of a breakout game on that Sunday Night Football win against Buffalo. And today it seems like the star power of Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry may have taken that step without the help of the O-line in certain moments. Tell me about the O-line and what you would grade them.
Well, the thing is, they're pretty beat up. You had Voorhees out of the lineup, who's the starting left guard. You move McCary from right tackle over to left guard. You have Roger Rosengarten, the rookie, playing at right tackle, and he gets hurt early. So you got a lot of different movements there. But overall, they turned in a solid effort. And granted, Lamar's going to run around, make plays, because that's what he does best, and he can make that offensive line look better. So overall, I gave them a C.
And the receivers had a good game. Zay Flowers specifically was stellar. Rashad Bateman having a few big catches. There was a drop by Nelson Aguilar, but Zay Flowers really didn't get much action last week. This week, it was much different, Mike.
Well, the thing is, if you come out and you're going to play a team like Kansas City or the Raiders, they have good defensive line, so you're going to probably get a little bit more balance as far as throwing the football. But when you play Buffalo and Dallas, you're going to run the ball, and, hey, you bring in the guys you can bring in, and you just keep banging away. Today, they got behind, and this has not been a very good offense that catches up. But today, man, they came out, and Mark Andrews makes plays. Isaiah Likely starts making plays. Bateman started making plays. You kind of see it's starting to take a kind of form here. And I'm not going to say they're going to win the Super Bowl, but, people keep saying, well, you need an identity, you need to be a running team. No, you don't. You need to win a game. All right, so if it takes throwing the ball 28 times, Lamar throw the ball 28 times and win the game. If it takes running the ball, Derrick Henry running the ball 28 times, win the game, whatever it takes. So they do have an identity. It's called balance. They're very versatile.
Speaking of balance and winning the game, I feel like you win the game in the trenches, right? That's the age-old saying. Win the game in the trenches, the O-line, the D-line. And they seem pretty balanced in mediocrity today, especially when I was taking a look at potentially what you were going to be grading the D-line. Talk about them and your thoughts on the defensive unit.
Well, I thought they held them in check as far as running the ball, but still, they were effective. Burrow was good at mixing it up, going over the top with the play action. So I didn't see anything great from the defense at all. I thought they played well in the final 4 minutes, and that's what a coach does. A coach is supposed to get you to the final 4 minutes of a game, and then the playmakers make plays. Well, today, the playmakers made plays, even though they weren't very good in the first 3 quarters, but they did make plays. Matabike played well. I thought a big sack late in the game. They turned it up a notch. It's almost like they found their hope again. It's like, okay, Lamar's playing well. Well, let's support him. But they did okay. I gave them a C.
Yeah, and linebackers specifically, wanted to talk about number one, Tavius Robinson had a big sack, his first of the season on the outside linebacking position. And then more inside linebacking, Roquan Smith got off to a fast start, but still kind of the middle of the field looked a little bit open, Mike.
And it still is. I mean, and you can see it, and you can't always see it on TV, but you can see it here in person. The back end is totally confused, where I don't know if the linebackers are getting deep enough drop, and then the safeties are kind of confused at the same time. So you see these guys running these slant ends, and like, whoa, okay, can't you get a shoulder? Can't you get an arm on these guys? Can't you slow them down a little bit? And that didn't happen. They didn't have much of a pass rush. I mean, Kyle Van Noy, I think he had like 2 tackles today. Oweh didn't get much pressure. So Cincinnati did a nice job of handling those guys up front. So overall, I gave him a C-, but I thought Roquan Smith played extremely well.
Yeah.
I think he might have had like 15 tackles today, but he played well. He was a force in the middle, but again, they got to get to these coverage lanes to start covering these tight ends and these receivers on these slant ends.
Yeah, no question. You talk about Kyle Van Noy. I was saying his biggest play of the game was calling heads on the coin toss for overtime.
And he won.
And he won. That's a big play, Mike. That's a big play.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was.
Not a lot of big plays out of the secondary, except for that big Marlon Humphrey pick. Of course, that was the biggest play out of the secondary, but put that aside for a minute. And it was not a great game, and I feel like that's putting it lightly. The Bengals were kind of just able to pass all over Stevens and Marcus Williams and Humphrey. What did you see out of the secondary?
I gave him a D-. And, unfortunately, like Burrow at the end of the game, how many times can you run that slant in before a veteran like Marlon Humphrey goes, oh, I'm going to eat that up for lunch? They kept going back to it. And I thought Wiggins might get one because he's very fast, has that good closing speed, recovery speed. I thought he might get one, but they just kept running it over and over again. And if there's a weakness to this team, especially on defense, it's in the secondary. It's their coverages. They're unorganized. Sometimes it looks like they're a little tired. As I wrote in my column for tomorrow, they couldn't cover an ant with a quilt today. That's how bad it was. Will they get better? It can't get much worse than they played today. But with that said, Chase and Higgins are pretty good receivers. And you figure if there was a team that's going to heat up and play well, it probably was the Bengals with Joe Burrow as quarterback.
Yeah, no question about that. I mean, Higgins and Chase probably the best receiving core in the league. And they really got exposed in the secondary. Of course, Lamar Jackson kind of took it into his own hands. And then Justin Tucker hit that massive 56-yard field goal to tie it, which is something that we haven't seen this season from Justin, hitting 50-yard plus field goals. What do you think about the special teams? A little about Justin Tucker first, and then, of course, we can get into the punting and kick return game as well.
Well, I gave the special teams a C, because I thought Jordan Stout, he had 3 punts, I think 56 yards. So he averaged like 56 yards on a punt, on every punt. That's pretty good. That's a good day. Tucker comes in and he hits the field goal, and it put people at ease to say, okay, he had a 56-yarder, game's on the line, he crunches it. He also hit a 24-yarder in the game. The problems I had with the special teams was the kid Collier. He fumbled a kickoff out of bounds. How does that happen? That should never happen. The Bengals had a kickoff return, 27 yards. I mean, that shouldn't happen either. So you're waiting for a big play from this group. Like, when are you going to hit one? When are you going to make a contribution to this team besides the kickers? When are you going to get a big punt return, a big kickoff return? We haven't seen it yet. So they get a C.
And then we'll leave you with this. The coaching, as we like to discuss every week, and I think it happens to be the most entertaining part of our conversation on a weekly basis because it seemingly has not gotten better with this aspect, in your eyes at least. Talk about John Harbaugh and the coaching from the offensive and defensive sides as well, in a game that really could have used some big coaching moments.
You're talking about specifically about that clock management, the time management at the end of the first half?
Yeah.
When he called the timeout instead of forcing Cincinnati to use theirs, and they had 3 left and they go down the field and score. Man, that shouldn't happen. Those kind of things, they have a presence in big games. You don't want to be on the opposite end where you lose games because of that. Somehow or another, and I wrote this for tomorrow, is they need to get a guy who can come in and say, John, no, that's not going to work. Slow it down a little bit, and let's think about this, because your clock management, your time management decisions haven't been very good. And it's been like that for years. This isn't the first time it's happened. I mean, remember a week ago, they called the timeouts in the Buffalo game, and people were like, whoa, what are you doing there? And even he admitted it was like the worst thing I did. I should have never done that. It's happening every week. And again, when you get in a postseason and you're playing Kansas City, those things add up. And you're playing Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, those things add up. I did like the way Monken came out and established Derrick Henry in overtime. It's almost like he basically said, we're going to eat up 10 minutes of this clock because we're going to run the big boy. And they turn him loose on that toss, which had been a very good play the week before. And they go for it. But defensively, Zach Orr, I still don't know what they're doing defensively. Fortunately, they made some plays at the end, but they get like a C- a D. I was not impressed with the coaching today. And in fact, this was a playoff game. They may have lost this game.
Yeah, and there are going to be close games like this throughout the rest of the year and in the playoffs, and coaching, of course, is going to be so important. But Ravens get a big win. The thriller, take a little sigh of relief if you're a fan. But as always, Mike, we appreciate you coming on. Looking forward to talking to you after next week's game.
All righty, no problem. Thank you.
I'm Kai Jackson. Thank you for watching. Here's another video to watch. Also, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel.